Welcome to Auction version 4, the latest event management software tool from Auction Systems. This is the first in a series of tutorials for data entry for names. In this tutorial, I will show you the first name entry panel. The Names Data Entry area can be found on the main Home Task ribbon. Click Data Entry and then click Names. This is how the Names Data Entry screen will look when you first go to this task. If you have any names in your data set already, the list of all the households or company name records of any type, invitee, donor, or volunteer, will appear on the left. There are some filter buttons above the list. This first icon is selected for you, and in it you will see all the household and company records in your entire data set. The buttons to the right will filter this list to a subset of all names. Name type and attendance panels will be discussed in detail in later tutorials, but what gets entered in those panels controls what you see in this left column and what the filter buttons will do. This next icon will filter all the name records down to only the people that are marked as the name type invitee. The I in this column stands for invitee, D stands for donor, V for volunteer, and an A indicates that at least one person in the household or company record is marked as attending. So if you choose the invitee filter, you will only see records in your list of names that have an I in this column. They may also be marked as a donor or a volunteer, but at a minimum, they are marked as an invitee. The next icon is RSVP. This will filter the list below to records in which at least one person in the record has been marked as attending in their individual attendance panel. The next icon will filter the list to only donors. And the last icon will filter the list to volunteers. On the right side of the screen, you will at first see the help system. But if you want to look at the data entry form for any household or company, click on the name in the list on the left, and their name entry form will populate in this space. You will be able to edit or modify any part of that form for that household or company. To look for a particular name in a list of names, start typing the name in the search field, and the list below will further filter down to any name record that has that combination of letters in any part of their name or company name. When adding a new name to your data, be sure to start in the All Names list by clicking that icon before clicking the plus sign to add a new name to your data. This is the Name panel for adding a new name. It's the first panel in a name entry form. To the right of these name entry fields is a list of possible matches. Matches are names that already exist in your data set that may match the person you are entering. And since you haven't started typing in any of these name fields, every name in your data set is a potential match. I like to start in the primary last name field, which is where you would enter the last name of the first person you want to list in this household if the household is for a family. If this is a donor record for a company, the last name would be the last name of the contact person for the company. The reason I like to start with last name is that the list on the right will start filtering down to only people with the same last name. If you were to start with the first name like Bob, you will not see a match if Bob was already in the data as the first name Robert. If you see a real match, there's no need to continue entering more of the name. Simply click on the match and choose Use Selected Name. Keeping an eye on this list will prevent you from entering duplicate or near duplicate names to the data. If there are no potential matches as you continue to type the name, the list will go away entirely and the main name entry form will expand to fill this space. Let's look at each one of these name entry fields. The first field in this panel is a drop-down of Salutations, also known as Honorifics. In version 4, if this name record is for a household headed by a married couple, the primary salutation could be Mr. or Dr. And the salutation for the secondary name could be Mrs. or Dr. again. Or if you prefer, you can leave the honorifics as none. But remember, since you have flexibility as to how names will appear on documents, you can decide by the document if you want to use a salutation or not. You may want name tags to have only first and last names, but mailing labels may need to include the honorifics or salutations. These salutation fields are a drop-down, and you populate the drop-down for each salutation field by clicking the plus sign and adding a new salutation to the pull-down. After the first name and last name is suffix. This is where you put in junior or senior, or if this record is for a military person, the honorific could be captain, and the suffix would be USN if the person is in the Navy, or U.S. Air Force if the person is an Air Force captain. Nickname is handy if the person's name is Charles or Judith, but they often go by Chuck or Judy. You may want the mailing label to print out Mr. Charles Smith, and would prefer the name tags to pull from the nickname if there is one, so that the name tag would be Chuck Smith. We will talk about documents in another tutorial, but just to let you know, when formatting a document, you can tell Auction to give precedence to the nickname field. But if the nickname field is blank, for any record, it will always pull from the first name field. Special Needs is a pull-down that can be added to by clicking the plus button to the right. A typical special needs would be something like gluten allergy or needs wheelchair access. Special needs can be reported on. For example, you can give a report to your caterer or banquet host listing who has special needs and where they're sitting. Role is a text field, and you can use it to track who's the MC, who's the chairman, etc. This is not a good place to track whether someone is a committee member, a board member, or part of a specific group. These things are much easier to track and report on in other panels that will be discussed in later tutorials. If this name record is for a person or couple who will be attending your event, if you're using bid numbers, you can give them one right here by entering a bid number or clicking Next Bid Number. And if you would like the secondary name in the record to have a separate bid number, you can click that too. But you don't have to give bid numbers in order to save the record, and you don't have to assign bid numbers in the name entry screen. You can later go to Event Prep on the main Home Task ribbon and assign bid numbers to all your attendees, and Auction will autofill these fields for you. The Quick Check button is also for attendees. If you capture the bidder's credit card number in advance, you can click this button, or if you're using one of our partner credit card systems that sync with Auction, these buttons will be auto-clicked when a sync 1 occurs. If this button is dark, the words Quick Checkout will appear on the bidder's invoice, which means this bidder has already given you a credit card, which you will charge for their purchases later. They can avoid going to the cashier at the end of the event and can go straight to item pickup. Do not click this button manually unless you have a secure way to capture their credit card and can charge it at a later time. Never save credit card numbers in Auction. Anyone who happens to get a look at your project would also have access to credit card numbers if they're stored in Auction. If this record is for a couple with the same last name, click the Couple button. When you do this, the names will appear on documents as Mr. and Mrs. Smith or Bob and Catherine Smith, depending on your style preference. If this household record is for a couple that do not have the same last name, click Individual. Auction will know to show them as Mr. Robert Smith and Mrs. Catherine Jones, or Robert Smith and Catherine Jones, depending on your style preference. If this household has only a primary name and no spouse, or if this is the name of an individual contact for a company, click Individual. If this record is for a company, whether you know the contact person for the company or not, you can enter the company name here. If you do not know the name of the contact person in the company, if you put in a company name, you can still save the record even if the name fields are left blank. Once you have the company listed, you can decide on whether you would like this record to fall in alphabetical order in any reports and lists by the name of the company, which is list by company, or in alphabetical order by the first letter of the last name of the person in the primary name field. When adding a new name record or when editing an existing name record, you must click the Save button on the ribbon or click this little Save button in the panel to save the name or save the changes you made. Once you save, a summary of how the name would appear in documents, if you choose formal, medium, or informal, will appear at the top of the panel or when the panel is closed. Please see the next tutorial in this series, Data Entry Names, the Address panel. Thank you for joining us.